on the beach? Yeah.
That sounds like a good idea.
How are you? Just wanted to figure out my schedule if I had to carve out an hour or two next week.
Might take that.
What?
Next where I get bored.
Is
I'd like to spend the time out on the beach with you.
I was thinking about playing catch. You did?
Yeah.
I can't throw it, he can't catch.
Well, I'm not going to demonstrate my lack of skill. All right, we've got about 30 seconds, so keep talking. Okay, everyone, welcome to the North Platte City Council meeting, June 7th, 2022, here at 5:30 p.m. in the City Council chambers. We appreciate having you here. Please find a comfortable chair. I did intentionally cool the room down a little bit because there are a number of people in here, and when the meeting is going on, we try not to let the air run too much because it makes a lot of noise in the microphones, and the wide audience we have at home can't hear what's going on. So I would just remind everyone, when you're speaking, please make sure you're speaking in your microphone. We did have some issues with them during our last meeting, and that's been subsequently resolved, so that's good news. Without further ado, I'll call the meeting to order, and we have an invocation by Pastor Bob Deerdoff, please.
Let us pray. Gracious and generous Heavenly Father, we thank you this day for the many blessings you have bestowed upon our community. Not the least are those who serve, those who are hired, those who are elected, those who are in positions of risk. We ask your blessing on all of them. We ask that you would grant wisdom and guidance for the meeting this night. That which is best for all the citizens would come forth, and we would do so with joy and delight as being your people. As our community prepares to celebrate Nebraska Land Days, we ask for your hand of safety upon the celebrations, upon all those who will be traveling to be a part of it. We ask, Lord, that you would give us grateful hearts that use well and wisely the resources you have blessed us with. We ask your special protection upon those who serve in our law enforcement offices, in our first response services, and as well as in our nation's armed forces. As we commit to you our meeting this night, we're aware of the fact that you are so good to us. Help us show that in our gratitude in our response to you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor. Roll call, please.
Nisley?
Here.
Tryon? Here. Bowles?
Here.
Lucas?
Here.
Garrett?
Here.
Harmon?
Here.
Reeker?
Here.
Wood?
Here. Open Meetings Act. A current copy of the Open Meetings Act of the State of Nebraska is posted on the wall at the back of the council chambers, should you wish to review it. Meeting procedure. The public may address specific agenda items at the pleasure of the mayor. If recognized by the mayor, please identify yourself by stating your name and your address. Please address the council through the mayor and limit your remarks. We respect our city employees and request that any complaints or criticisms of employees not be aired in a public meeting. Concerns about employees should be brought to the attention of the city administrator or the mayor. Individuals in violation will be declared out of order. I'm going to pause for a moment during awards and accolades and talk about a couple things that are going on in our community. You might notice in June we have this exciting celebration we call Nebraska Land Days, which we've had for many, many years. just invite all the citizens and area people to get out and enjoy the things to do during Nebraska Land Days. A lot of times we hear people complain that there's not enough to do in our town. Well, there is plenty to do during Nebraska Land Days, so please get out and enjoy the fine activities. There's all sorts of things from church services, the mayor's prayer breakfast, which I am a little biased to. I think that's very exciting. And also, of course, the fine rodeos, the concerts, et cetera, et cetera. I would also, in that vein, mention each city council member has one of these balls. If you would kind of hold it up, everybody, real quick, please. It's got a fine American flag on one side and a saying that says, City of North Platte, moving forward, working together. These, and many like these, will be thrown during the parade by the city floats. Now, there's not enough for everyone, but you'll have no chance of getting one if you don't attend the parade. And there will be lots of candy thrown as well. So please get out for the parade if at all possible. Thank you. Consent agenda. Sorry, I didn't organize myself real well here today. All matters under the consent agenda are considered by the City Council to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. Any City Council member may, however, remove an item from consent by request. 1. Approve minutes of the May 17, 2022 meeting. 2. Place on file Treasurer's Report for April 2022. 3. Approve the application by T's Bar and Grill of Wallace for a special designated license on June 11, 2022 from 12 p.m. to 1 a.m. at the D&N Event Center, 501 East Walker Road for a wedding reception. 4. Approve the applications by Old Depot Vineyard and Winery of Brady for special designated licenses on 8 consecutive Thursdays from June 23, 2022 through August 11, 2022 from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. at Fort Cody Trading Post, 221 Halligan Drive for a music series. 5. Approve the application by Lang Investments LLC DBA Brothers Tavern for a special designated license on July 1, 2022 from 5 p.m. to 12 a.m. at the Fox Theater, 301 East 5th Street for a comedy show. Number 6, approve the application by Long Dogs Distilling LLC of Arapahoe for a special designated license at the North Platte Farmers Market in the District 177 Mall parking lot on Saturdays from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. and Tuesdays from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. for the duration of the farmers market season. Number 7, adopt recommendation by the City Planning Commission for preliminary and final approval of Clewine 4-3 plat pending completion of a petition for paving.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda as
Presented?
Second.
Motion Reeker, second Carmen. Calling the question on approving the consent agenda, please. Consent agenda is approved. Moving on to item number 8. Third reading and action on ordinance number 4092, amending the City of North Platte Code of Ordinances, Chapter 156, zoning sections 156.001 through 156.145 relating to residential zoning regulations, sections 156.290 through 156.310 relating to supplemental zoning regulations, section 156.370 through 156.375 relating to non-conforming issues and structures and amendments to the City of North Platte official zoning map. Lane, would you please read the ordinance?
Ordinance number 4092, an ordinance of the City of North Platte, Lincoln County, Nebraska, amending Chapter 156 zoning sections 156.001 through 156.145 relating to residential zoning regulations, sections 156.290 through 156.310 relating to supplemental zoning regulations, section 156.370 through 156.375 relating to non-conforming uses and structures and amendments to the City of North Platte official zoning map, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for the effective date and publication thereof in pamphlet form.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt ordinance number 4092 regarding amending the City of North Platte's Code of Ordinance, Chapter 156, zoning sections 156.001 through 156.145, relating to residential zoning regulations, sections 156.290 through 156.310, relating to supplemental zoning regulations, sections 156.370 through 156.375,
relating to non-conforming uses and structures and amendments to the City of North Platte official zoning map on final reading.
Second.
Motion Vols, second Lucas. Any discussion on item number 8? Seeing none, calling the question on item number 8. Item number 8 passes. Next, we have a public hearing. Before we get started on the public hearing, just want to mention a couple things. I do have my timer setting here down here, and I'm not going to necessarily limit people to time, but I have been kind of tracking people who get up and speak over the last several months to sort of get what the average time is. So if you approach the approximate 5-minute mark, I'll probably kind of gesture to you and ask you to sort of sum up your thoughts just because we have a number of people in the audience. But if you're continuing to make points and not repeating yourself, feel free to keep right on talking, okay? We are going to start with the presentations from a couple folks from the city as well as Mr. Pearson. Mr. Pearson will have about 10 minutes. I don't think the presentations from the city folks will collectively take 10 minutes, but we are going to take a little time up front to make sure we're all operating with the same set of facts. I do think it's highly important as we consider anything in front of the city to make sure that we're all operating with the same set of information. As we have monitored social media and a couple people that have come in to talk to me, some of them had some really good facts on this subject of housing on the north side of town, and some of them were completely misinformed. They did not have the facts or anywhere close to the correct facts. So before this discussion goes before the council, I want to make sure that the facts, as best as we can get them, are out there and in front of the public eye. So that's why we're going to take a few minutes at the front of this public hearing and make sure that happens. And then we'll proceed normally with the public hearing just as we would on any other subject. So with that being said, I'm going to officially open the public hearing, and I'm going to invite Judy Clark up to talk about some streets here that we've paved on the north side of town recently, because one of the folks that came in to talk to us had a different perspective on what the street paving on the north side of town is or was or has been over the last several years. So Judy's going to kind of set the record straight. Oh, excuse me, I got to read number 9 before I get started. Judy, thanks, Lane. Number 9, this is a public hearing to consider action on North Platte Planning Commission's recommendation to approve the City of North Platte redevelopment plan for the Devco housing project for the real estate described as tract of land in the southeast quarter of Section 29, Township 14 North, Range 30 West of the 6th PM, Lincoln County, Nebraska, pursuant to Nebraska Community Development Law and the passage of appropriate resolution. The public hearing is now open. Judy, you have the floor to talk about paving.
Okay, Judy Clark, Planning Administrator for the City of North
Is that
Platte.
mic on, Judy?
It is.
Okay, thank you.
Am I not talking loud enough?
I just couldn't hear
Okay.
you, but.
So we're just going to kind of talk about some of the improvements that have occurred over the past, 15 years now, beginning in about 2005. So funding for paving and infrastructure improvements in the northwest portion of the City of North Platte began in about 2005. In cooperation with Nebraska Department of Economic Development, which is NDED, they had created a community revitalization grant program to help revitalize areas of town that have been deteriorating over the years and to help spur economic growth in those areas. The northwest portion of North Platte was able to qualify. There are certain qualifications that you have to meet in order to qualify for this type of funding source, allowing street improvements in this area. Each year, there's approximately $150,000 to $300,000 that was granted to the city between the years 2006 and 2014 to help the city with costs of infrastructure improvements. The city was required to match those funds. In reality, the city contributed a lot more than what that required match was on each project. So planning for the improvements began in about 2005. Contractors broke ground in 2008 on the first of 6 community revitalization projects. The first project, so this is kind of a map. I'm sorry, it's kind of tiny. This is the northwest portion of North Platte. On the left side, you would see Buffalo. On the right side, you're going to see the school. And so the first infrastructure improvement project was on the 2000 block of West 13th and the yellow highlighted area. So it basically paved, did infrastructure improvements, water, sewer, curb, sometimes stormwater, storm drainage, those types of things. So that was the first project that was completed. The second one was in 2009, provided infrastructure improvements on West 14th from Adams Avenue to Carr. So again, you can see that in the yellow highlighted area. The next year was on West 14th Street from Carr to about Buffalo Bill. And then in 2012, there was a project, project number 4, which targeted the streets. Now this is south of the railroad tracks. Still on the west side of town, but this is south of the railroad tracks. 5th and 6th Street from Emory Avenue to Mills. Custer Avenue was improved from 6th to Front, Emory from 6th to Front, and then Hayes again from 5th to 6th. So that was an area that was south of the railroad tracks. And then the next year again, we went back to the north side, did some improvements on West 13th Street from Madison to Hayes, and it did not include that block that we already did the previous year on Custer and Carr. And then the final project was in 2014, I believe it finished up in 2016. The improvements on 13th, and we finished some improvements on 13th and then went up to West 18th Street between Jackson and Sheridan, again in the yellow. In 2014, the Nebraska Department of Economic Development discontinued that community revitalization program. And so since then, the city of North Platte has applied for funding through Nebraska Department of Environmental or Economic Development, Public Works Program for projects on West 9th, East G, and Eugene. Unfortunately, the city's not been able to receive funding in those areas under this program yet. The city planning department continues to apply and seek for additional funding sources for different infrastructure projects through state and federal agencies. Some have been successful, some have not been successful. The focus is always there, working for a better tomorrow for the community and citizens of North Platte by improving sustainability and vitality in all areas of the city. This is a picture of an assessment district that was done. This was not grant funded, so this was an assessment district that was done 13th Street to 15th Street, West 15th from Hayes to Buffalo Bill, and then Cody Avenue. That was all done with an assessment district.
Judy?
Yes.
Could you back up real quick?
Okay.
Tell us exactly what an assessment district means to the people that live along the district.
So when infrastructure improvements go in, and Brent can correct me if I'm wrong, then the city contracts to put in those infrastructure improvements, and then each of the properties are assessed a certain dollar amount based on the front footage of their property. So each of these properties had to pay for their improvements. The other improvements that were done with CDBG funds you cannot assess properties when you use grant funds. So these are the properties that did have to pay for theirs through an assessment.
Thank you.
This picture here, the yellow highlighted areas are the projects that were completed with block grant funding. The blue highlighted areas are those that are currently gravel streets. So we do still have some gravel streets in that area. The remaining streets, the ones that don't have highlights, are either already paved before these projects or were paved after these projects occurred, either with asphalt or concrete. So we do have some blue areas, and I apologize, I got crazy with the yellow, so down at the bottom it kind of looks green, but that is blue also. So there are, still quite a few streets in the area that are gravel, but that grant funding source ran out, and so, they can still petition for paving. We can do assessment districts if enough property owners are wanting them paved in that area, and we're still looking for grant funding all the time. So if something comes up, we'll be reaching out and try to get that funding secured. Any questions?
Okay, none, but we reserve the right to recall you.
Okay.
Okay. Lane, I think, has some information. One of the other things that I heard quite a bit about was numbers surrounding the cemetery and the use of the cemetery. So I asked Lane to do some statistics on that, so he's going to give us some statistics on use of the cemetery and predictions for the future.
All right, I also have Lyle Mitchell and Kim Backer here. Kim handles every request for cemetery space, and so she knows exactly how much usage we have and got me the statistics on
Microphone,
that.
please.
Sorry. And Lyle is a cemetery director, so if we have any extra questions on the cemetery, they'd be able to help us as well. So we took the last 5 years current trends with the cemetery. So we've had 27 full burials per year average. On top of that, there's been 31 plots sold. Now, some of those plots are actually used for some of those burials, and some are plots that people are buying for future use. We've had 27, on average, 27 ash burials per year and 8 ash plots sold. So that's on top, usually on top of the ones used. Four columbarium interments per year, about 6 niches sold per year on that. About 58 total interments in the cemetery per year. The developed cemetery is currently about 32 acres. Approximately 2.7 acres of that is still available inside the developed area for use. Normal statistics, about 1 acre can accommodate approximately 1,000 single plots. Then to the north of the cemetery where we're talking, we're still talking about keeping about 11 acres adjoining to the north for future development. According to Find the Grave, there's 25 cemeteries in Lincoln County, though some of those are no longer used for new burials. There's more than just one option in Lincoln County for burials. When you look at our anticipated future needs, and I apologize, it's a little small, but on the left-hand side, if we take all 58 interments a year, and those that were all converted just to full burials, 58 a year we took 25,000 people approximately in the North Platte immediate area. If we expanded the percentages to a 40% growth in population, which would put us about 35,000, that would translate at today's numbers to about 81 full burials a year. At those current needs, at our current needs of 58 per year, the existing 2.7 acres would last approximately 46 years. The adjoining north 11 acres would last another 161 years. That gives you 207 years of total cemetery available with what we're talking about today. With the 40% growth figures, that 81 per year, the existing 2.7 acres gives us a little over 33 years. The adjoining north 11 acres, another 115, so that's about 149 years of area for the cemetery. If we would triple our current needs, going from the 58 to 174, that'd give us about 15 and a half years on our existing developed acres, about 54 on that 11 acres to the north, or about 70 years total, and that's on everything, all ash burials, all columbariums, etc., becoming full burials and not any more ash burials or columbarium. If we go on the right side of the screen, that is going with our full burials and just looking at the full burials only, 27 per year. 40% growth takes that to about 38. Going down again, current needs at 27 per year. We have 100 years left in the 2.7 acres. The north 11 gives you another 346 years of those full burials, total of 446 years. At 40% growth, at 38 per year, our existing gives us 71 years. That land to the north would be 246 years, or a total of 317 years. Tripling our full burials to 81 per year gives you 33 years current, 115 to the north, or 148 total, almost 149 total years. So just an idea of kind of how the land falls at today's rates. Now, we have seen an increase going to ash burials, going to columbariums. Columbariums use a 12 by 12 by 12 inch space to put the ashes in, and then they're usually in a wall. You can get different heights, different lengths, etc. So there, burial practices change over time. We can't be for sure what will happen, but the trend has been towards more ash burials taking up less space.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions before Lane gets all the way to his chair? Okay. Thanks, Lane. Next, we have Mr. Pearson, who may need a little help with technology up there, Judy, if you don't mind.
Duly accepted.
is it, okay, thank you. Mayor Callahan, council members, what we're presenting to you tonight is a redevelopment plan that would allow us to put in a proposed shovel-ready housing subdivision. I should have introduced myself, I apologize. Gary Pearson, I'm president of the North Platte Area Chamber and Development Corporation, 502 South Dewey. This is being proposed by our Chamber and Development Corporation. I'll go into some of the reasons of the why, where, and how, and so forth. This has met the unanimous approval of the Planning Commission, as well as the unanimous recommendation for approval from the Community Redevelopment Authority. So first, let's talk a little bit about the housing demand. I think it's very well documented that we currently have a historic low housing inventory. We have a realtor on both our Chamber and Development Board as well as our Economic Development Committee. We get monthly reports. It's been very, very low, sometimes in the 20s and 30s in recent months. That's about 20% of where it should be, if not lower than that, 15% of where it should be to have what you'd consider a healthy housing market in our size of community. When houses do go on the market, if they are market ready, they sell immediately, and there's multiple offers, oftentimes driving up the prices. The supply and demand is doing that, and many times those prices land above the value and above the appraisals. This is frustrating job seekers, home seekers, and employers. And the one thing we have to remember in all of this is the most critical issue that we currently have before our community. We've been very successful at recruiting some potential new industry and job creation in our community. We always have to remember homes are where the jobs live. You bring that to today's world, and everybody knowing that we already have a housing demand. We have all these potential jobs and companies coming into town, and in the month of May is when you ought to see this development exploding. The city monthly report just came out for the month of May. We had one entire new housing permit issued for the whole month. We have a wonderful opportunity to grow North Platte, but it won't happen if this community is not aggressive towards housing development and embracing housing opportunities and being as creative as you could possibly be. Developer-friendly communities are the ones that's going to win this battle. Everybody's facing a housing shortage. Everybody's trying to compete for the same jobs and same companies, and the ones that will embrace, the ones who developers feel they're being readily accepted into and will do some creative things, they're the ones that are going to get the new housing developments. Why the north side? 2018 housing study showed there is more distressed housing in that particular area of the community than all the other areas. So in our Chamber and Development Corporation, which has discussed housing for each month of the 6 years that I've been here, we finally decided that, you know, if other private developers aren't going to bring these projects forward, it leads us to either the city or the Chamber Development Corporation or working in a partnership with the city to bring these things forward. If you noticed this weekend's paper, the North Platte Telegraph, they did a survey of the values of homes on the north side, and I think they only came up with 3 houses valued above $250,000. We felt that by putting a subdivision there, it would help energize development and the housing market in an area of the community that could really use a spurt of new energy. This particular area that we're targeting has already been determined blighted and substandard. That's another and very important factor, because if we do not have approval for tax increment financing for the infrastructure, this development will go away. It will not happen. And you're going to be challenging other developers that will come forward and tell you the exact same thing, because that's what they're telling us. This is city-owned property. It currently has a 0 tax base. The location itself was designated for housing by the City Comprehensive Plan in 2011. That was recommended by the Planning Commission, and the City Council adopted it, saying this particular area, we think a good fit is housing. Housing developers, as I previously stated, want the city or Chamber and Development Corporation to install the infrastructure. They want to do what they do best, and that's build housing. as opposed to a zero tax value for the potential of 100 to 200 to 300 years. If this is continued to be reserved for just cemetery use, it will continue generating zero tax dollars. You add 51 new houses on there, it will add to the tax value significantly over that 100 years and fill numerous jobs. Who will build? We initially proposed this as a modular home housing subdivision, working with a housing developer that is owned by a parent company that has multiple investments in this community and wants to do more, and they were committed to trying to help us get this done. We initially thought we could hit a price target that we're now finding with the supply chain issues and inflation factors and just materials in general, it's been very, very difficult for them to hit that preferred price market. We're also reached out to numerous other contractors who have reputations for building good homes, have done so in the community, of doing so in neighboring communities, asking them about their interests as well. They said under this particular concept, if we were to drive forward the infrastructure, they would have some interest. So we'll continue negotiating with them as well. Our target is to fill these 51 proposed lots within 4 years. If we can do it sooner, more power to everybody, because everybody will win. The target is the $250,000 price point or less, visiting with the real estate community and some of the banking officials that are members of the chamber. Everybody feels that that's a target that really fits well on the north side. We may or may not be able to hit it, though. Our target is also to provide a 1,400 square foot house, 2-car garage, 3-bedroom. We found in our Shot in the Arm program that became a very, very popular product that sold quickly when developers offered that in the community. All we want to do as a development corporation is break even. We want to get these lots in the hands of the developer as the most nominal cost we can, so the home buyer in the end can benefit from the price savings. This is the proposed housing subdivision, the 51 lots that would fit on that particular piece of property. It would abut both the area where Madison School is, some other adjacent housing in the area that's zoned in a similar fashion, as well as the River's Edge Golf Course, which we think it also makes it a very desirable area to potentially build houses. One thing we heard at the Planning Commission meeting was different citizens saying that there's enough low-income housing on the north side, we don't need any more. This is anything but low-income housing, I assure you. Everything that we have done is to concentrate on market rate housing products as a Chamber Development Corporation. There are other entities, organizations in the community that deal with low-income housing, Habitat for Humanity, Lincoln County Community Development Corp., and they're trying their best to fill that niche. What we're after is the workforce housing. These are some of the models from Bonnevilla Homes, which is owned by Chief Industry, based out of Aurora, Nebraska, a Nebraska developer. Again, Chief has some investments in our community and wants to do more. Here's some more examples of those designs. It'll be very nice laid out in the neighborhood with a lot of different possibilities of how they can look and be shaped. Here's kind of some of the interiors that exist in their current homes. Very nice and very end-user friendly. Sells itself when you walk through the houses. Here's some sample layouts of the layout. As everybody knows it, of course, in North Platte, we all know you can't have basements, so it has to be all ground level. There's some other plans. And these are just 3 examples of our Shot in the Arm housing that also fit that $250,000 price threshold or under. Some of those were as low as the 200s, but of course we know the world has changed in the last couple of years with everything that's happened in the world and in America. So, but these were local developers, local builders that built these houses, very, very nice, and they didn't stay on the market very long. Here's some interesting stats I think that's very important for all of us to pay close attention to. And you've heard me talk about this before, but in 1980, there was what you consider 7 peer communities, trade center communities in the state of Nebraska, all in different geographic regions, county seat towns. North Platte ranked number 1 in population. You see the 1980 census there at 24,509 population, and where the other 6 communities sat: Fremont, Hastings, Scottsbluff, Gearing, Kearney, Norfolk, and Columbus. The 2021 estimated, and this is of course according to the Census Bureau, we now rank 7th as a community in population. You see what those other communities have done since 1980 and the way that they've embraced housing, the way that they've presented themselves as a housing developer-friendly community, and what the population gain or loss has been. Again, we're the only community that had a loss. And some of those communities had substantial gains. And here's what else I think is really interesting. This is according to the 2021 State of Nebraska Report on Tax Increment Financing Projects. We all know that hasn't not always been a very accepted practice in North Platte, but it is a great redevelopment tool. It's a great economic development tool, and it really does spur a lot of activity in a community. These are those same 7 communities, and what the number of active tax increment financing TIF projects they currently have on the books. Kearney is the high at 41, Hastings 31, Scottsbluff Gearing 31, Norfolk 24, Columbus 16, Fremont 11, North Platte 7. The community's been very, very conservative in using this practice, but in the grand scheme of communities that are of our size, it's a necessary tool that really does enhance development and draws developers to your community. The TIF value that's currently within the increment that's outstanding in each one of those communities, you can see range from a high of $174 million in Fremont to a low of only $14 million in North Platte. What percentage of the city valuation in each one of those communities is on the TIF rolls as opposed to the overall valuation in the city? Again, all of those communities are significantly higher than North Platte. Most of them about 3 to 4 times greater. Fremont is certainly much above that, and North Platte is the only one with less than 1% of its city valuation impacted by TIF. How is TIF being used across the state of Nebraska? These are the Nebraska housing TIF projects, the value being added of the new investments that are currently outstanding. Outstanding meaning they're not paid for yet by the full increment that's been captured. But you can see that continues to grow in popularity across the state. And I assure you, my colleagues across Nebraska, they're all scrambling to try to attract new housing projects, and every one of them are looking at using TIF as the infrastructure that's going to help them get to the end goal. 2022 is expected to top $1 billion in housing TIF projects across the state of Nebraska. If you look at North Platte historically and the number of TIF projects completed since 2003, when it was first put into use, there's been over $70 million in new valuation added. That's on the tax rolls, already on the tax rolls. That's created $2 million in new tax revenue annually and created approximately 1,000 new jobs in our community. Going to end the presentation at that and ask for your approval so we can move to the next steps forward in negotiating with getting the infrastructure in place if you so approve. I appreciate your consideration of that.
Thank you, Gary. Okay, we continue to have a public hearing after some presentations by the city staff and the Chamber and Development Corporation. So if anyone would like to speak on this subject, please come up to the microphone and tell us who you are and where you live, and we'll be happy to listen to your thoughts.
I do think as far as.
Sir, could you tell us who you are and where you live, please?
Rick Miller, 1317 West 17th.
Okay,
I live
thank you.
in the Bridal Acre subdivision. Most things have been addressed. I'm not against the present plan. As he said, a lot of us are concerned we're going to get more low-income housing out there. We do not want that. Most people have already given up even coming today because there were surveyors out there already on Friday. So they said it's already a done deal. We don't even think we need to consider going. The things that weren't addressed is the radio tower that's out there. It's been a safety hazard for years. It is not properly fenced in. We have on one occasion had to go over there and get a kid down off of the tower. That needs to be addressed and should be taken care of, fenced in or something, because there's going to be more kids out there. The other thing is presently buses and vans that come for the soccer games park on Adams Street, and they also utilize the cemetery land there when they run out of room for parking, and there's as many as 50 cars that end up being parked there. So that would probably have to be addressed. The other thing is the kids from Madison presently get picked up on Adams Street. The buses pick them up on Adams Street. There's not really an adequate way for parents or the buses to pick up the children that are getting out of school. We have a traffic jam from 3 to at least 4 o'clock. The only other thing that I wrote down that people were interested in is we're concerned about the traffic on Rodeo Road. Cattle trucks will probably be coming in and utilizing Rodeo Road, not the ones that come from the west. There are a few already. I don't know where they're headed, but it's difficult to get onto Rodeo Road from Madison or from Jackson, Adams. The light at Adams is not sufficiently breaking up traffic, so from about 3 o'clock to 7 o'clock you have a heck of a time making a left turn to go east onto Rodeo Road. The only other thing, let me see if I covered it all. The only other thing anybody's talked to me about. Main concern was the safety for kids getting out of school. Let me see. Oh, Adams Street. Every time we get half inch of rain or more, it's flooding at 17th and Adams and right at the entrance to the soccer fields by the tennis court. It's almost every time it rains. And the flooding at the tennis courts puts the street underwater at least a foot deep for probably 3 car lengths. That prevents people from using Adams Street. Adams and Jackson are the main streets used to get out of that area. Jackson also floods. It floods at the corner of 17th and Jackson and also to the north of that. For whatever reason, I don't know. They've come out and suctioned out the drains, and the next rainstorm it still continues to flood, so there's a street flooding problem out there. That's about it. That's the only things that anybody talked to me about.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Thank you.
Let's go run some cameras down those storm sewers and see if something's broken maybe. Okay, still in a public hearing. Anyone else like to speak on this matter? You're welcome to come up here, sir.
Hi, I'm Elena Moreno. I'm from Liberty House. Quite a few things. One thing, most things in the housing and all that are good and all that, but sometimes they're way too much. Sometimes they have to decide in renting their own housing and all that until they get paid the lowest price of all. Equal rights to every citizens in the county and state. sometimes it's not so easy to call most without no jobs and all that, and disappointment and all that, and out those. But be very careful with what we do. And I've said that'll be it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moreno. Still in a public meeting. Oh, we have someone coming up.
Hi. Good evening, Your Honor, all you public servant people, thank you for your time. I feel like I'm wasting my time because Lane shut down.
Would you please tell us who you are, please? I mean,
Terry Woods.
I know who you are, but you please tell us for the record. Thank you.
Terry Woods,
Thank you.
902 North Emory.
Thank you.
Lane told us that our cemetery's going to last forever, so why am I wasting my time? I don't believe that's true. The baby boomers are coming up, and we're all going to start dying at a faster rate. I have lived in North Platte since 1986, and since I've lived here, that has always been considered expansion for the cemetery. Somebody, years ago, somebody far wiser than me, decided that we needed an insurance policy. You can relate to insurance, Pete. We need insurance to know that we have a place for our dead, to inter our cremains, our burials, whatever. We need that assurance for 500 years. We don't need, who's to say where North Platte's going to be? We're supposed to be on the cusp of greatness. Okay, let's prove it. Let's set aside. This isn't broken. Don't try to fix it. It's reserved for a purpose. If nobody likes looking at the bare naked ground, build a playground. That's where that came in. Build a playground to use for the next 100 years. There isn't one on the northwest side of town. And I'm sorry, but going to Cody Park is a bit far for little kids. I've heard from lots of people that live over in that area about the drainage problems, that it's always been a problem since the day the street was paved. It isn't a temporary clog. If you had to build houses there, why wouldn't you build golf course houses there? Why would you build modular houses there? Why are we lessening the land? If you're gonna sell it for all it's worth and get nice houses, not necessarily modular, not that modulars aren't nice, but, because they are, but, and if you've ever picked up a sixth grader at 307 at Madison, oh my God, you have no idea what a nightmare it is. You can't get down 14th. People are parked both sides of Adams. I go at 2:30 to pick up my grandson who gets out 307, and then you have to wait for the cars to clear out so that you can leave. So I usually don't get home till 3:30. And, you know, an hour to pick up a child, and that's every sixth grader in town. Some are on the bus, yes, but I'd bet you 75% of the parents are picking up their children themselves. And the last thing I wanted to say that really bothered me was that I heard in a meeting about a guy who wanted his street paved. He lived, I think it was on 19th, and he wanted his street paved, and what could he do to get his street paved? And in one breath, we're telling the developer, yeah, we'll give you the money, and all of us as citizens are gonna pay for your road. But on the other hand, that guy has to pay for his own road. I had to pay for my own road. So everybody should have to pay the same. Questions? No, I didn't think so. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hold on, Mr. Miller. Let me see if anyone else wants to talk, then I'll give you a second, okay? Anyone else have anything to add? Go ahead and have a chair, Mr. Miller, but I'll get back to you. Don't worry. I won't forget you. Okay, sounds good.
Rita Hernandez, 2121 West 9th Street. Just a few points. Paving on 9th Street, or 19th Street, excuse me, they stated that, yeah, we could get or ask for those to be paved, that is totally housing authority property down there. And that should have been paved when those houses went in. Don't know why it didn't. And Gary had mentioned something about that, Mr. Pearson. Selling on the north side, if you ask a realtor basically to come and sell your house for you, they ask for the lowest price that can. So as an individual fact, that you sell your own house and you get your price. And that was probably one of the houses that we just recently sold that was almost in the 200 range, 200,000 range. At the community planning, I know that I think it was Gary Pearson that had stated that no housing was being developed. I think it's kind of a bad situation stating that, because we have had Habitat for Humanity go in there, and that's all low income or whatever. Lincoln County, I think it's called Lincoln County Housing Development, excuse me. They have put housing in there. And I think the county is wanting to file for a grant or do a grant that wants to put housing in as well. Blighted and substandard, you know what? I would be ecstatic if somebody would blight or come and build where our blighted across the street is, because you know what? I'm willing to be like Warren Buffett. They can pave my road, everything, get everything free. Let's see. And as far as the tower goes and busing, all that Mr. Miller said, you need to go down there and sit there. Ty, you know, you don't have any kids that young, but grandkids are coming, I'm sure.
Oh,
And if it stays there,
I've been there.
if it stays that way, then, you know, and I'm sorry, but I was on the planning when that was voted in, and now I'm kind of hitting myself in the rear. But I'm for the blighted and substandard and the TIF. I have nothing wrong with that. The housing, sure, we need housing, but like I stated before, we don't get the taxes from the cemetery, and I can understand where they're wanting to put that. We're still getting money for those people that we're putting in the ground, whether they're in the ground on columbariums, what have you. We still have the money, because Mike had just sent out a flyer for getting your plots and your burials together. People are knocking the fence down to get in there. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Don't knock anyone down there in the back. Okay.
Nancy Fallhaber, 265 North Maloney Drive. Basically, the reason I was wanting to speak this evening is just to kind of update you a little bit. I don't know that everybody is really understanding how desperate we are. I hope they are, but as of today, there are a total of 17 houses on the market. That's it, in North Platte. That's all. There's no more houses for sale, 17. There's not 35, there's not 45, there's not 50, there are 17 houses for sale. And we have to move forward. We are desperately in need of housing. And I will tell you that of those 17 houses, there's like half of them are over 200,000. So what we really need are the housing like we are talking about in this area. And if I've talked to builders, I've been on, or not planning commission, excuse me, I've been on DevCo and the chamber board for many years, and we've talked to builders from out of town, and unless it's shovel ready, they won't come. And we have to get this shovel-ready so these people will come and build these houses. Because there is no place for these first-time home buyers. Our first-time home buyers, most of them, not all of them, but a lot of them are qualified up to almost 200,000. And we can build houses in that price range. They're not going to be fancy, but they don't have to be. They just need a place to live. So, I put my 2 cents in.
Thank you. Anyone else like to say something? Mr. Miller, we're back to you.
She reminded me of one thing, would probably be of interest to whoever is going to contract to build homes out there is the water table out there does fluctuate. And in Bridal Acres, we've had 2 times where crawl spaces were flooded. If you go off of the height of ESU 16, you still might be going down too deep with a 3-foot foundation. They really have to watch and check that out. If you went off of my property when the river flooded the last time, I ended up with water in my crawl space. And I thought, when I built my house, I thought we went off of all the rules they had and how high we should build and all of that, and I still ended up twice in the 45 years I've lived there have had water in my crawl space. So it'd probably be important for them to consider that when they go to building the houses so that the people that buy the houses don't end up having a flood problem in their crawl spaces. I can tell you like right now, you could probably dig down and hit water at 5 feet in most places out there. So that's this time of the year. If the river floods, it'll come up to where you can hit water at 3 feet. So that's going to be an area where their expertise is going to have to come in and decide how deep they want to go when they build their houses. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Public hearing still open. Anyone like to add anything? Mr. Moreno, come back up and talk to us.
What's the thing? What's the thing about them? With the burial and all that, let them be buried where they are at. And sometimes have a couple of funnies in leaving a bottle or some coffee. Or
Okay.
do a funny while do each other. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Yes, please do, because the folks at home can't hear you if you're back there, sorry.
I don't disagree with Terry Woods, 902 North Emory. I don't disagree with any of the people that say we need housing. I think that we're desperate for housing. I agree with that. But I think you all need to get off your butts and annex some land so we can grow out and not just cram more in. I think that's all. Thank you.
Anyone else? We would need a motion to close the public hearing if the council would like to do so.
I would make a motion to close public hearing.
Second.
Motion Vols to close the public hearing, second Lucas. Calling the question and closing the public hearing. Public hearing is now closed. Thank you for everyone who took the time to speak. We really appreciate your comments. Now, number 9, the council will consider action on the North Platte Planning Commission's recommendation to approve the City of North Platte redevelopment plan for the Devco housing project for the real estate described as attractive land in the southeast quarter of Section 29, Township 14 North, Range 30 West of the 6th PM, Lincoln County, Nebraska, pursuant to Nebraska Community Development Law and the passage of appropriate resolution.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move to adopt the resolution as presented in the council materials and approval of the City of North Platte redevelopment plan for the DevCo housing redevelopment project and approval of related actions.
Second. Motion Lucas, second Garrick. Discussion on item number 9. And council, if you have any questions for anyone who presented, let me know and I'll be happy to ask them to come back up and clarify or answer questions. Mr. Acre, you have the floor.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I have a question for Mr. Pearson. Gary, can you tell me what workforce housing actually is? What, is there a range that we're looking at?
What the state of Nebraska currently considers that in qualifying for some of their programs, that threshold was recently raised from 275,000 to 325 and under. Anything that exceeds that is more considered more custom build type houses, but that's the target range. For instance, the affordable housing trust funds that we were able to tap into to supplement what the city and the chamber and the hospital did on the shot in the arm program. That was capped previously at 275. During this last legislative session, that was raised to 325, and they now acknowledge that.
So,
I mean, every sector of the workforce desires different housing. But if you have that where the primary jobs that you're recruiting into town gravitate to that, or people that want to upgrade where they currently are, that obviously opens up some of the lower end housing for others. And we're certainly not saying that we don't need more. There are low and moderate income, low income housing project funds that, like Lincoln County Community Development Corp, sometimes is able to tap into, or the Housing Authority. That is very much needed also. It's just our focus has always been market rate. And that's what we've tried to do with the shot in the arm. It's always been market rate or workforce housing with that threshold and under. When the shot in the arm program was designed, I think initially it was 225 or 250 was the absolute threshold. But we found that it works. And it was the working person that was buying the homes, and the ones that wanted to move here and fill jobs. They were the ones that were buying those homes.
it seems like the promise of sustainable beef has been one of the instigators, so to speak, of the promoters of needing additional housing, and I'm not arguing that we need additional housing.
One of many. They're one of many. I hear from employers every single day.
And I understand that. I guess sustainable beef is by far and away the largest development, potential development that we have on the horizon that's gonna need people, homes for people to live in. Are these people gonna be able to afford a $250,000, $275,000 home?
Some of them won't. That's why we probably need additional mobile home parks, other types of what you'd call, there are some subsidized housing that you have to meet a certain income threshold to be able to qualify. North Platte, again, hasn't embraced a lot of those programs, but they're out there. Other communities use them pretty religiously. And so I think that's a market that needs to be nurtured as well.
Is there any particular reason why the Chamber and DevCo haven't focused on that segment of the market?
Well, because other organizations were created to do those kind of things. And outside development companies specialize in those things. One developer out of Grand Island came before the city a couple years ago and met with a lot of resistance. They was able to put in an application, but it did not score enough points in the application process. These are funds that are all hotly competed for. What we'll see out of the legislation, the session that just ended, was there was a lot more money put in for affordable housing projects. So all of those programs will be announced over the course of the next few months. and more funding in that probably than what's been allocated over the last 10 years. So there are going to be numerous opportunities for others to jump on board and to do that. But there are a lot of companies, a lot of developers that specialize in those programs. Our focus has always been the market rate. Those are the types of jobs we go after, the primary jobs, the breadwinner jobs for the community. We don't want to create more jobs that just shove people out of one person's back door into somebody's front door. And so we try to target the higher wage, potential higher wage jobs that new payrolls that can come into the community, and sustainable beef is certainly a great example of that.
So with that in mind, how do we address the people that are gonna work at sustainable beef and are not gonna be able to pay $250, $275? And I understand what you're saying. It would seem to be, to me, being a capitalist that I am, and I don't say that with any kind of disdain, if I can sell a $250,000 or $300,000 home, I'm probably going to make more money as a developer on that price range of a home than if I sell a $150,000 home. And that's probably one of the big deciding factors as to what homes a developer is going to build, is strictly the profitability of the higher end home versus the lower end home.
If you're not making money, you're not going to be in business.
Totally agree with that. So it would seem to me like that we should be, if we're going to be assisting contractors to build homes, we should be assisting contractors that are looking to build the lower end homes, because we already have a dearth of them, because the developer's not going to build them because he can't make the money on them.
Well, that's why we diversified the Shot in the Arm program to do the upper floor housing in the downtown area, to do some rehab, working with Lincoln County Community Development Corp. To do that. It's from A to Z, Ed. It's just there's no magic bullet out there. It's going to be a cure-all. You know, we're working with developers on all ends of the spectrum, from the very high end to those that, you know, the other types of housing we do need in the community. But again, you're going to have to embrace zoning of those types of projects in community when a developer comes forward, and look at those kinds of issues when they do. They were not well received in the public hearings that I went to, or the neighborhood meetings, when a developer tried to put that type of housing in. And it would be good quality housing. It just had income thresholds that served that population. It would be great looking housing, but it was, and when those kind of things happen, that reputation gets out, other developers hear about it and say, what, when I can go anywhere, they can go anywhere. You know, they're going to go where a community embraces it and helps it. We try to help everybody, but this is what we feel is our greatest need.
You're the first one that I think I've heard mentioned publicly about the possibility of mobile homes. I think that's something that
I do. I think we do need a nice mobile home park. I really do. I think that's the quickest way, even though they're backlogged now too. You have to get on quite a waiting list even to get a mobile home. But they build good quality mobile homes. I like what some of the developers here have done, is buy some of the older mobile home parks and have changed them out into better quality. But they're well built. I started out in life, my first house I ever bought was a trailer house. You know, but I grew up in a 120-year-old shack in the hills in Banner County, so that was a big upgrade.
I understand. You showed us a picture of 3 local homes, I think, that were beneficiaries of the Shot in the Arm program.
We probably have another 75 like that benefited from Shot in the Arm. Very similar. We just didn't want to inundate you with examples.
They're nice looking homes.
They are.
Were those beneficiaries of tax increment financing also?
Some of them were.
Shot in the Arm?
Some of them were. Both.
Some of them were, and some of them were
Right.
not. Okay.
Right.
Regarding,
The ones that weren't, Ed, is because the infrastructure already existed. That made a difference. They didn't have to get a raw piece of ground and put the streets, the sewer, the water, and everything in. Those lots were already, they were shovel-ready. That's why they were able to do that. But we're running out of those lots. And that's why developers are now faced with this challenge of taking a raw piece of ground and trying to make it work, and they can't make the numbers work.
I think one of them maybe close to the final questions here. I guess this isn't a game show, but sustainable beef and the mall are pretty large tax increment fund projects for our community.
Yep.
How does that change the ranking regarding North Platte and the other communities?
We'll still be dead last for a while.
Okay.
Those communities obviously do 5, 6, 7 a year sometimes. And so you always have these new ones going off and fully onto the tax rolls, other ones coming on. So they're going to have other projects coming on as well. But yeah, that is going to make us look better. But that certainly paints a picture of what's gone on the last 15 years.
And the other question I had regarding the tax increment finance and that ranking, as I recall, Fremont was by far and away the highest one. And I'm not sure, but they just built a new Costco facility there.
Yes.
And that probably really spiked their
It did.
TIF.
Yep.
And I don't know the relationship of industry in those communities and how much of that tax increment financing was actually used to bring in industry into those communities. But the communities that have a higher ranking of tax increment financing, from my own drive-through experience, have way more industry than North Platte. And I think you'll agree with me, I've always been a big supporter of tax increment financing for industry. I think it fits wonderfully well there, because with industry, and I'm not talking about commercial, I'm talking about industry, like sustainable beef. You mentioned today about the rail park. That would be another classic example from my perspective that would fit the tax increment financing model that I can get behind. Because it doesn't help 2 or 3 developers. It helps the whole area. It helps the whole community. And consequently, the difference between the initial value of the property and the final value of the property, that tax increment that won't be going back to the taxing entities, and that has to be used to pay it off, the bond still has to be paid off, that tax load is spread out over the whole community because everybody's getting a benefit from it.
Those are new taxes, though, generated by that particular project.
And I understand that, Gary, and I understand that very well. But I guess my premise is still the same, that if we take the incremental tax gain away from the taxing entities, the cost of that taxing entity to do business continues to go. The cost of maintaining that taxable entity still needs to be funded. And with new development, with population growth, the cost to fund that taxing entity is going to increase as well. And so we need that extra taxing income to pay for that. If we don't have that tax increment finance to pay the additional cost of that government agency to do business, then we have to go back to the taxpayer to make up that difference.
Now, Ed, you and I could sit here and argue all day long, and we're never going to philosophically agree. A lot of those projects pay personal property tax. That's not exempt. Their employees buy vehicles. That adds to the tax rolls. They all make wages. They spend their money here. They offer, or they contribute to the city sales tax. And I could go on and on and on. You look look at Kearney, they're the most aggressive at using TIF. They got the lowest tax rate. They've had the greatest population growth. And yet they've been 7 times more aggressive at using TIF than North Platte has the last 15 years.
Well, these are just some of my comments, some of my thoughts. As you all know, I would support and did support the sustainable beat and will definitely support the rail park.
And I appreciate the city's genuine support. I just felt compelled to show you some of the facts out there.
Understood.
And the direct correlation, which I think really does exist.
Thanks for answering my questions.
Yep.
I didn't see who went first, so I'm going to defer to Ms. Tryon since she's a lady, and then you can have it after that.
She is a lady.
Okay.
Thank you. Gary, I know you talked about housing shortage, but nothing has been said about the apartment situation. So where are we with that?
Everyone that's coming onto the market is full, and they're having waiting lists. That's attracting another generation of people because they're good starter homes or they're good downsizing places, but they've become very popular. We haven't had new apartments to that magnitude for quite some time, and the developers are very happy. And I think the mall will find the same way. That transitional housing, that type of housing was very, very much needed. And the younger generation, they like to congregate in those areas. So that is very much needed as well. And it needed to be addressed, and it was. And now we've finally got developers here that understand the importance of it, and they like what's happening. And it's helping North Platte.
Do we have an estimated finish date for that project at the mall?
It's obviously changed because of the supply chain issues and some other things, but as you can see every day, it's, I think fully it'll be 2023 before everything's all said and done. How soon the housing comes on board. Obviously, the bottom floor of the retail will probably come on board before some of the housing. They've took on a monumental task.
Okay, back to the high water plane in that area. Those modulars, will they be on they'll be on a foundation, but will it be a cement slab or will they have a crawl space?
We've talked about most of it. Yeah, crawl space is what we've recommended to the developers
Okay.
that we've talked to.
And then I know that at one of the meetings I attended, someone had spoken to the owners of the golf course. I know this project is gonna border right up to them. Are they okay with kids?
They're very
Yes.
excited about it.
All this stuff in there, over on the greens?
Yep.
They're okay with that?
They're very excited about housing there. They even talked about trying to do housing out there at one point as well. And some of those lots that abut there, they might be a little higher end home too, because they'll be very desirable lots. I mean, if you get people all the time want to build near a golf course, and they've even, I don't want to speak on behalf of the golf course, but they even said, if we have to modify something on that one particular fairway, they're very open-minded to it, but they're thrilled.
Okay, because that was my next question, because I've talked to other people that live next to the golf course, and balls and kids and don't mix too well. Let's see, and then my other question was the comment about that cemetery land not really having any income to the city. I mean, there's no taxes. But if they sell those burial lots for $730, there is an income based off of the cemetery.
100 years from now, yeah.
Well, I don't know if it'll be that far away or not. I'm one of the baby boomers, so. Let's see, and then, is there, the Shot in the Arm program, is that still operating, or what's the
Yeah,
status of that?
we are. We've got some active projects, but we still have enough incentive. This goes to show you how distressed this market is in trying to attract developers. We have 34 slots still available that anybody that want to build a spec house, can't be pre-sold, under $325,000, they could qualify for it. Nobody's knocking on our door. They have to start the homes, they have to have them reasonably ready for occupancy by April 1st. We're very motivated to try to get it used because we have to use it up before we can apply for other grant programs, and there's gonna be a lot of them come forward in '23.
And then is there any other land around, or lots, I should say, I guess, or acres, that could be developed other than the cemetery?
Not that is designated substandard and blighted on the north side. That's the factors that we needed to have. If you go to a raw piece of land, you go through that whole process, you've just lost another construction year. If we can show a model that works and everybody sees that it works, maybe it gets replicated in other areas, but we've got to start somewhere to have this. The next thing we're going to talk about on the agenda is Twin Rivers Business Park. We see what happens when you have a shovel-ready park. Same thing can happen with shovel-ready housing subdivision. It happened with a shot in the arm. The first phase, shot in the arm, had 48 new houses. They were all on existing lots that were already put in by a developer in the past, but didn't get them developed out. And that's the attraction of having something shovel-ready that's so critical for developers. Time kills projects. Time also changes the scenario. Look what our life has changed the last 2 years, from what we knew it to be. So that is one of the great deterrents to development, is adding more time to it.
Hopefully it'll change in the next 2 years too.
For the better.
I hope so.
Yep.
And that brings up another question. I know we don't have a magic wand here, but the cost of goods has gone sky high. So if we, the city and Tiff and all this, if we invest in this housing development and then there's deflation comes along, I mean.
What's the deflate though?
Well, I don't.
Our model is based very, very conservatively on what those houses are going to be valued at. And we're hoping for the best, but we're trying to be extraordinarily conservative in our estimates on the recapture of trying to make us whole out there. But when we laid this out for developers, they got engaged right now. And they've just been, they love what North Platte's potential is. But again, they can go where they want to go.
Well, I'm not in favor of Tiff, right?
And that's very unfortunate.
It's just hard for me to get my mind wrapped around in helping a couple of developers.
You're not, you're helping the community.
Well, granted, but if there's supply and demand, that's gonna happen anyway, and the community will benefit.
Why?
Anyway.
Why did we get one housing permit this month?
Because they know the TIF program is out there.
I
I do believe that has some influence on it. Okay, next. I'm finished. Thanks, Gary.
Yep. Mr. Carmen, you have the floor.
Thank you. Mayor, while I got you up here where I can see you and talk to you, I wanted to ask you a question, but I'm sure the mayor may call me down for being off topic a little bit, but I'm going to ask you anyway. And he can throw his rubber ball at me. We heard an awful lot about sustainable beef for a long time. That's all anybody wanted to talk about. And it seems like to me it's gotten kind of quiet lately, and as best as I can understand, which is I don't have a huge ability to understand a lot of, especially financial matters, but as I understand it, the reason we're not going ahead with that is because they haven't got their finances in a row to where they can go ahead. Is that an accurate assessment of that, or could you maybe give us a thumbnail sketch of what's going on with sustainable beef?
Well, I'm not a spokesperson for the company, but I do stay in constant contact with them. The reason they've been quiet is because they want to do all their talking at the groundbreaking.
You want to what?
At the groundbreaking.
Oh.
They obviously were very challenged also with the changes in the price structure of what was happening. So they had to go back to the drawing board in some regards, but they're very confident. I talked to the CEO of the David Briggs this morning, communicated with him, text back and forth. But he says things are coming together. We were talking about a potential groundbreaking date. And so I just wanted to touch base with him and
That'd just be a horrible letdown for the whole community.
They're very
fell in a heap.
Yeah, they're very committed to getting it done.
Glad to hear
That
that.
need is not going away.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Bowles, you have the floor.
While Gary's up here, you can sit down, Gary. You gotta be getting tired.
Well, I'm fine.
No, sit down.
If you're
Sit
gonna
down.
ask him a question, he's gotta stay.
I'm not gonna ask him a question. I'm just gonna make comments, here real quick and try and summarize this. Thank you, because we had factual speakers here today. Judy did an outstanding job. Lane did an outstanding job dissecting the facts from fiction and to give us and paint us a broad stroke picture so that we can make an intelligent decision on this project. Gary, thank you. Brandon, thank you, and your entire DevCo board. We are so fortunate to have forward thinkers here who are taking risks. The chamber is alleviating the city from risk. They are taking the risk on this project. And Gary stands up there and presents us the facts and takes a certain amount of heat for doing that. And he is the one standing up there taking the risk. The chamber is taking the risk on this project by being the developer on it. We should be thanking him for allowing us to proceed and allowing other contractors and developers to come in here. So I just wanted to express my sincere gratitude. Without the chamber and DevCo, we would not be nearly as prosperous as North Platte is right now and will continue to be for the foreseeable future. So you have my full support on this project, and I truly believe North Platte will be much better for putting this housing project up there. On a side note, Mr. Miller, thank you very much for presenting. You did bring some good points. I sat up there, and I sat in the corner kind of by that tower and looking over at the golf course going, boy, we're shooting this way low. Like Gary said, I think those golf course lots can bring a pretty good chunk of change. It's going to be a beautiful development, looking at the houses out there, however it is structured. So one thing might help the water alleviation and the drainage system. A road happens to be going in right near that tennis court, so maybe Brent can get his engineers going and get some drainage stuff going. That's well above my pay grade, but thank you to the chamber, and thank you for presenting this to us. If you look purely at the facts, this is a no-brainer, so thank you.
Mr. Woods, I think beat you, Brad. Go ahead. Go ahead, Mark. You have the floor.
I'm gonna make you get back up, Gary. I'm sorry. I'd be okay with you sitting in the chair, but you know.
That's okay. Yep.
What are the chances that the home you're describing to us is going to be built? I mean, it sounds like there's a little bit of, we are not sure we're gonna be able to
Well-
make this work at this price point.
Right.
and-
We have, and the developer wants to make sure that they'll sell too. And of course, they're gonna probably experiment with that. I mean, if it winds up being the modular person and we can't get them down to that price point that we need, and take a risk on 2 or 3 of them and see what happens. If the demand is there and they sell, they'll continue to build. Same with our other builders in town, you know, that's kind of the way they've done it. If they're building and they sell, they'll build another one, and they'll build another one. But, you know, we gotta try, we gotta start somewhere, and maybe the price point gets alleviated a little bit later down the road.
So if they didn't go at this price point, it would be possible that something smaller and not as good would be put in, not the quality, not the looks.
Well, obviously, we have to make our numbers work too. And if you're gonna go to the trouble building a new house, you want it to be something that's gonna be around for 100 years and sell again and again and again if need be, and our name's going on it.
Yeah.
We have 600 business members to answer to and a community to answer to. Developer has their reputation to answer to. We want something that everybody's gonna be proud of.
Well, I agree with that entirely. That's why I asked the question. I don't want a low-quality product put in there.
None of us do.
Okay, that's good. All right, I think that's the only question I have for you. Thank you. Actually, my problem with Tiff is, I actually think that it is the influx of government money that raises the prices. And that as long as it continues, it's a process that will eventually self-destruct. You look at the student loan program and what it's done to the cost of education. You look at the housing market back in 2008 where the government decided and pushed for everyone to own a home. And we all know what happened there. I mean, I see that as the problem. I know everybody does it because I guess as a developer, you know, hey, everybody, well, not everybody, but a lot of people like to get money. So that's my opposition to it. Now I'm going to make you all groan because, Lane, I have a question for you about the cemetery. Sorry I didn't catch you in time. I did some figures on that too, and I came up, I went out to the cemetery and measured graves to get a size, and I came up with a 4 by 16 for a grave. Is that, because you have that wide swath, which I assume is for the equipment, so they can get in there and dig without driving on anybody's grave.
I'd have to defer that to Lyle or Kim as far as size,
okay.
plot sizes.
All right.
Lyle, I think you're getting
Lyle, I'm
designated
making
to answer the plot size question, please.
Sure.
Everyone was pointing at you, even though you couldn't see it.
Yeah, thank you. Well, you're welcome.
Yeah. Lyle Minchell, I'm the Park Cemetery Supervisor. There's two different sized lots over there. The older section, they're a 3 by 16, and the older ones are a 4 by 16. They had to go to 4 foot to accommodate the vaults that we had to install, and that's what they are. Generally, a hole will only, go 4 foot by 8 foot. That way we have another length in there to do that in between the next headstone and the foot of the grave, and so we have that room to work in there, so.
Yeah. Okay, well, when I did those figures, I came up with 680 graves per acre. Now, I took out 2 to 4% of the land for infrastructure, roads and stuff. I don't think that was too high. Now, I agree that we have a lot of land out there, and it is a lot of years. It sounds like forever. But the 680 would make a difference. And I honestly believe we're going for housing. All of that land has been designated in the comprehensive plan for housing. So I foresee that if your project is a success, those other 10 acres are going to be sold. And then we're down to 2. And that's, what did you say the 2 would be year-wise?
With anywhere from 15 to about 48 years, depending on it.
And we don't know.
That's not being discussed, and that wouldn't be my recommendation to sell those other 10. And the numbers I got per acre, that was quite a bit of research on the internet. That's, some of them were saying up to 1,250 lots. I went with what was mostly the average was 1,000. A lot of places are going to dual plots where you have, someone buying for 2 people with casket on top of a casket. There's columbariums are becoming more and more popular. I mean, we could go. I mean, none of us are going to be able to predict because there's all different ways. I mean, we get 8 ash burials in a smaller plot, and so it just depends on the different burial methods. But I'm going with the going average on that number, and then I actually went with about 15% of that acreage up north being used for roads and stuff, and so I went with an 85% of that available land, not the 100% of that available land for the burial spaces.
I assumed you took out some for infrastructure. You're a smart man.
So.
Okay. Well, that's my worry because housing and that, I think there's a good possibility that it would be brought up, and I'm like you, I wouldn't recommend it, but that doesn't mean a future council won't sell that off. And then we've taken something that isn't a problem, and we've created a problem. We're gonna have to go buy more land, and then, you know, build buildings and all that, or we have to get out of the cemetery business entirely. Both of which I don't think the citizens are gonna like. Maybe we could put something in here, if this does pass and it goes, maybe we could, there ought to be something to guarantee that that land will not be sold, that it will be kept for future cemetery use, because this is what government does. We have no problem if we keep it. I mean, because we will have, you know, way into the future. You can't guarantee forever, but, you know, we aren't creating a problem where citizens got to spend more money. And also, you say, Pete, you say Devco's taking the risk. Well, if this fails, the TIF bond will be paid off by the citizens, because it'll be tax money, they'll have to pay it off.
No. Be paid off by the bondholder.
Well, isn't Devco holding the TIF bond? Where are you guys gonna get the money to pay it off if it doesn't go?
Well, we're working with a number of different avenues on who might own the TIF bonds, but it's not like a normal development district that the city issues the bonds.
So you won't necessarily own the TIF bond?
Microphone. Gary.
Oh, sorry.
We do not know that yet.
Okay.
But, yeah, but, and on TIF, city can certainly own the bonds if it wants to.
Yeah.
But- And there's some advantage to doing that. There's some advantage also to if you could find some investor-type groups or financial groups that want to own the TIF bonds. In my 40-plus years of doing economic development, I've never found it an issue for finding somebody to want to own them.
Okay, if the TIF bond's owned by the developer who's actually gonna put these houses in, is he, held to any of the standards of what goes in there? Can he just decide to do what he wants as far as what type of housing goes in?
Well, they'll want housing that's can have the type of value that's gonna pay off the TIF bonds, sure.
Yeah.
And at the rate of speed to, and that's why some TIF projects, you phase them in, so you minimize the risk as well, so.
Okay. If a developer owns the bond, could he build something and not sell the houses, but use them as rental properties? Is that allowed?
Well, if somebody owns a house in North Platte
Yeah,
and they decide to rent it rather than own it,
okay.
that happens all the time, right?
Yeah, I'm just asking. I'm just going
Yeah.
through all the scenarios.
It's called America, you know?
Yeah, well, I agree that, you know, they should be able to do
Build
what
a house,
they want,
you
but,
can't dictate to somebody you're gonna own.
yeah, I'm just asking.
Yeah.
Will these be eligible for shot in the arm if they're modulars? I was a little vague on that.
They would be eligible in the program, but, I don't think we can get the infrastructure in place in time to where they could qualify.
Okay.
Because the program ends in April, and they have to be reasonably ready for occupancy. Now, possibly some lots on the exterior could, but that's not the motivating factor here. And our motivation with Shot in the Arm is to find developers in other areas of the community that will build additional housing, but obviously, they're far and few between right now.
Okay. And one last question, are these eligible for the workforce housing grants where they actually help pay for the structure too?
You mean that's not the
I may
type
be
of
using-
TIF we're asking for, no.
Yeah, okay.
We're asking for the traditional infrastructure TIF, we're not asking for the vertical workforce.
Okay, thank you. I think that's
Mr.
all.
Garrick, you're done, Mark? Okay.
I'm done.
Mr. Garrick, you have the floor.
Gary, I got a quick question for you.
Didn't mean to make
All
you
right.
stand up and.
We're gonna get Gary a stool.
That's all right.
Set it up there.
No.
Have you guys had any discussion about having like a certain percentage set aside for maybe some of our local developers to develop some of these lots, or what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, we've had every discussion in the world. We've made it very well known among any developer in North Platte. Or we have some companies that are based out of here that are developing in our neighboring communities because those communities made it so easy for them to do so. And so we're trying to nurture every relationship we can. The other developers that we have here that are doing it in any kind of volume are as busy as they can be, and they're behind, you know, and they're selling their lots, and they're getting, because they have to take care of them first. But yeah, we're wide open on anything. We have no contract with anybody right now.
Perfect, I like that. I think it was Mrs. Woods made the suggestion that, to make it a golf court community. When I lived in Lincoln, I lived at an apartment complex called the Links, and there was a golf course that wrapped through it. We had so much fun on that. I mean, I loved it. So I don't know if you can get some carved paths, you know, weave through this community. It might be a selling factor, but you know, I appreciate.
Well, with some of the ATV ordinances that
Yeah.
you've modified.
It makes sense, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah,
So.
yep.
Hold on, just for the record
Okay.
books here.
All right.
ATVs are not allowed, nor are golf carts. It's UTVs only right now.
UTVs, okay.
Not
My
that we
bad.
might not do something for a golf course-based community, but right now,
Okay.
UTVs only, and only if you have a license.
I apologize, Mr. Mayor.
That's right. Mr. Garrick, do you have to continue? Sorry.
That's all I got. Thanks, Gary.
Okay, yep.
Okay. Ms. Woods. Oh, good Lord, I did it again. It's because Mrs. Woods is here. That's why I did it. Ms. Tryon, my apologies,
No,
everyone.
that's okay. I was just gonna say to Mr. Garrett that he doesn't need to worry about, the golf course is right there.
People do like their golf carts. Golf carts.
Yeah, that could be fun in the
Mr.
sun.
Lucas, you have the floor.
Thank you. First of all, I just want to reiterate a little bit what Pete said. Thank you guys for being here. I mean, I think if you look at what we're really trying to accomplish, we're trying to change the personality and reputation of our community on the development of housing. The reason, Ed, that we don't have the tax credit low-income housing specialists in our community today is they don't think we want them to be here, because we've told them that in the past. And we've told them that loud and clear. And it's good that we're talking about all these things, but it's a serious discussion, because we are known as the least development-friendly community for housing in the state of communities of our size. I hear that time and time again. I'm serving on a 50-some person NIFA group with Mr. Pearson, and we hear that. They laugh about how we look at working with developers on housing. And so I think really what's going on here is the Chamber Development Corporation is stepping up and saying, we're going to work through this. We want to work through this as a team. We want to take a team approach as a community, and we want to figure this out so we can compete. And you know, if you think, you got to think about the history of this a little bit. So the city originally, we had an economic development office here at City Hall, and then it was decided that it might be good to give the chamber a little more money and move more efforts there. And then we had Chamber and Development Corporation, two separate. We had the meeting to talk about merging those. I remember standing up and saying, okay, if we do this, are we going to get out of the development business because we're a chamber? And there were others that had that same concern. And we heard from that board, no, we're going to stay committed to development in addition to serving chamber members, but we're going to get all these synergies by combining our efforts. Well, thank you to you and your board for staying focused on that, because I was a little bit worried at the time that we would lose the focus on development, but we haven't. So this is really good. I spent a lot of time working on the cemetery thing, because I would tell you guys, I think it is a fair concern. Mrs. Woods, Mr. Woods, that's a fair concern. I heard from anybody who contacted me who had a negative concern about this, it was about the cemetery. We've gotten great analysis, and I want to share a little math that I ran with you guys. There's two ways to look at a problem like this. Okay, what happens if we run out of cemetery room? It could happen 50 or 100 or 200 or 300 years. I don't know for sure when it's going to be. But you also have to think about what's the cost of sitting on this land and doing nothing with it and not doing this project, okay? Well, I ran some math. If you take a $200,000 average tax assessment that grows 2% a year, use our current mill levy, if you go over 100 years on 51 lots, it's $63 million in real estate taxes, $63 million. If you cut that down to 50 years, it's $17 million. That is a lot of tax revenue collection under the real estate tax. So then, because I had my banker hat on at that moment, I said, okay, what's the net present value of that 50 or 100 years? In other words, how much money would the city have to have today and invest to make up for that loss of income? Well, on the 50-year calculation, it's $5.2 million, and on a 100-year, it's $6.4 million, and is my estimate. And so what I'm saying is that if to replace what we would lose in tax revenue, we'd have to invest $5 million today and make 5% on it over the next 50 years. So it's big money. So there, you have to remember there's a huge cost of not doing things. And when I look at the TIF history, well, the last 3 TIF discussions we've had on housing outside of the mall and the West A apartment complexes, but when we were talking about more housing for sale, the last 3 discussions have been one when Mr. Wilkinson came here to talk about trying to go to blight and substandard on Lakeview. And I think I was the only guy who voted in favor of that, and everybody else voted against it. Before that, we had Lonnie Parsons' project at Dixie and Phillip. And Mr. Eichhoff, it's nice to see you here because I know how hard you're working to build over there. And we had people lined up to talk about why that project was a bad idea. Fortunately, this council had the strength, and I had neighbors yelling at me, neighbors who still won't talk to me, who are in my area, who were so mad about the Dixie project because it was just going to ruin their neighborhood. Well, thank goodness we have it today. Thank goodness, Zach, you're there building homes. They're beautiful homes. They're selling well. And then if you go back before that, the last TIF project before that was the townhomes on East Phillip. That, I think, was a little less controversial at the time, and thankful we have those today. And so when I'm looking at this, I think it's a no-brainer, other than concerns about running out of cemetery land someday. But the cost that what we would cost ourselves by not having, we can solve that problem down the road. I'm convinced of it with what will benefit from it. I also want to have some clarity on the project too, to make sure everybody who's listening understands in particular. It is an R2 project, and that would allow for townhomes, duplexes, and higher density. I think there may be, they may need to use townhomes or duplexes to be successful in the subdivision, and I think we need to go into that with our eyes open. I'm all for it. I mean, in my opinion, we need a new mobile home park. We need a place for tiny homes. We need a place for all sorts of different homes in and around rural acreages. I mean, we need it all. I think we need 1,000 units in the 4-year span that this project is projected, and so this is only 5% of 1,000 units, so it's just kind of a drop in the bucket. I also really like some things about the plan. You'll notice that in addition to the acreage to the south of the creek, there's a triangle space that I think is designed maybe to help with water, the water drainage issues that you brought up. But that also creates some buffer. I mean, my vision is that maybe someday the city can put a little park in there. We have some room. I mean, we do have room there for things to create amenities, and I think all that's been very, very, very well thought out. So I really hope that we can support this project. I want all of Nebraska to see us supporting this project, because we have all these industrial projects coming down the pipe, sustainable beef, the rail park, and others. If we can't house them, those projects are going to fail. And believe me, everybody in the state's watching what we're doing here, because they know the demand for employees is going to be here, but they don't know how our community is going to handle and be receptive to housing developers. And so I'm hopeful the chamber can prime the pump here, just like you did with Shot in the Arm. And then you probably want to get out of the development business, I'm guessing, Gary. And then hopefully we can get this thing going and show the state that you know, we're ready to work with these people and get housing done. So anyway, thank you guys again. And Rita, just for the record, I had a 6th grader in the first class at Madison School where they took the 6th graders. Jackie probably waited for the hour on pickup more than I did, but I did my share. And it is an issue, and it's honestly, it's probably a bigger issue at Adams, or as big of an issue at Adams too. And so those, I mean, those things are important. We need to keep talking to the school district about it, but you're right about that. So anyway, I think I took my time. Thank you.
Mr. Carmen, you have the floor.
Some of the things he said. You know,
Get a little closer to your mic there, if you don't mind. We want the people at home to hear you. There you go.
what was I gonna say? I know I had something to say.
There's something about dropping kids off at Madison.
Oh, yeah. You know, we hear so much about high water and how when we want to pick up our kids from school, takes a long time because of the traffic jams in that same area there where we're experiencing water problems. Same thing happens down at Adams. I mean, we have traffic problems down there too. But I think it's almost, to me, it's kind of humorous that if we have to wait a half an hour, 45 minutes to pick up our kid from school, if that's the worst problem that we've got, traffic-wise, then we're in a lot better shape than a lot of other communities. If you've ever lived in a metro area and commuted for an hour and a half just to get to work, and then an hour and a half to get back home, then we can have a real appreciation for our time. And I'm not trying to minimize the inconvenience of having to wait so long to get our kids picked up, because that is a problem, and I'm not sure what we can do to solve it, but I think we're in pretty good shape right here in Old Flat Rock.
Thank you. Okay, mayor's prerogative on this one for a second. I just want to point out, I appreciate the chamber, and a lot of people have put a lot of work and research into proposing this project. Not all of them are sitting here. Some of them are sitting around this table, and everyone's given a considerable amount of thought to this. My perspective is that every other day when I come to City Hall, I walk into Judy's office and I say, has anyone come in to talk about a housing project? And I think I've probably done that off and on for the last 6 or 8 months, since sustainable beef became a very real project. As of this afternoon at about 4 o'clock, which was the last time I asked her, 0 has been proposed for housing projects so far. Nothing. Not 6 months ago, not 8 months ago, not last week, nothing. Which, I tell you that just to tell you this. If we continue as a community to do things as we've always done them and expect different results, we're crazy. We're absolutely crazy. So we may not have to do something different forever, but for a while, if we're going to be successful, we have to do something different. And that's it. I'm calling the question on item number 9. Please vote. Item number 9 passes. Guess what? We're ready for public hearing number 2 of the night. Is everyone excited? That's a joke, folks. Come on. Okay. Tough crowd tonight. Wow. Okay. Public hearing to consider action on North Platte Planning Commission's recommendation to approve the City of North Platte amended redevelopment plan for a portion of the Twin Rivers Industrial Park for the real estate described as attractive land in the southeast quarter of Section 15, Township 13 North, Range 30, west of the 6th p.m., Lincoln County, Nebraska, pursuant to Nebraska Community Development Law and passage of appropriate resolution. We are officially opening the public hearing at this time. Thank you to those of you that are leaving who came to spoke. We appreciate your thoughts and input. And I'm going to ask Mr. Pearson to continue his presentation first, as soon as we get the screen switched here.
This will be much briefer.
I'm going to start my timer here in a second. Maybe. Okay.
Just go forward.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Okay. Since 2003, North Platte Chamber and Development Corporation, at that time it was just the Development Corporation, started the Twin Rivers Business Park. At the same time, the Walmart Distribution Center project was coming forward. One thing the community learned from that whole experience is you need a shovel-ready business park a lot of times to entice development projects come along because they don't have the luxury of time to wait for that infrastructure to get in place. And from 2003 to 19, there's only 2 projects that wound up going out into the Twin Rivers Business Park once the initial infrastructure was put in place. We've changed the whole marketing scheme. I think we changed the whole attitude of the community towards development. We've marketed it different. And since 2020, we now have 11 new commercial and industrial structures that have been developed at Twin Rivers Business Park. Our shovel-ready lots are nearly gone. The blight designation for this area happened in 2002, again, at the time of the Walmart DC, around that same time. And I want to talk just a brief time about why it's important to have a community-controlled business and industrial park. In order to get requests for proposal and business prospects that are generated by the state of Nebraska, a lot of times a broker will come to the state and say, hey, what communities do you have that fit this criteria? All of them they don't want to deal with 14 different private developers in every community because the price structure and everything changes. They want to know in a controlled environment who is shovel ready, who can accept this project, who can jump on it, who can make things happen, and what kind of proposal will they put forward. The state then, those communities that have shovel-ready lots, and only those that do, receive a certified economic development community status. There are a lot of other things you have to do to get that status. You have to have your act together as a community. It's a good housekeeping seal of approval for economic development. So when we have those designations and we have a shovel-ready park, we get occasionally requests from the state of Nebraska, NPPD, third-party brokers, or just blind leads. Somebody saw it out on the internet, the way that we market it. And Cassie's got that down to a science in helping us market that on a nationwide business or basis. K&M Tire Distribution, it's out there right now, is a perfect example. Company that needed to react quickly within 30 days to have a site ready to go and be able to buy the land and be able to start turning dirt. That would not have happened had we not had this business park. So that's the very reason why it's so critically needed. If we get the RFP, we put an attractive enough proposal together, we get them to visit North Platte. That's all the goal is to get them here. We get them here, we think we can sell them on North Platte. And we make sure all the other private developers that have development-ready areas also, they get to visit those sites because they may want, something else looks better to them. But at least it gets us in the game. We have a current issue out there with Ingress Egress. We've got one road coming in, one road going out, with Twin Rivers Road. And now we have 11 new commercial and industrial buildings out there. We're going to have a lot more traffic, a lot more potential employees. So it's becoming a real issue, as well as a safety issue for fire and everything else that goes with it. So we're proposing in a redevelopment plan to build an east-west connecting street. This is a north-south coming in right currently. And here's a picture you can see on your screen of what exists out there right now. You have the original Cabela's call center that's out there that's now owned by Bass Pro. They have because of COVID, they decided to go. That building is now available because they've decided to let everybody just continue to work from home. So a nice building structure. And then the whole world of call centers has changed with the advent of the internet. FedEx built out there, and then all the buildings to the further to the north and a little bit towards the northwest are the Prateria Ventures Chief Industry project that was put in out there. And then the two squares out there, if you drive out there today, you'll see 50,000 square foot building being built by K&M Tire Distribution. Their goal is to build another 50,000 square foot building right beside it. And then Coors Distribution is consolidating all of their warehouses and buildings in North Platte to build a nice structure out there right now. The additional land you see in the lighter color and then the darker shade color we own as a development corporation for future expansion. We recently lost a company that was looking out here that wanted to be in North Platte, wound up going to another Nebraska community, one of our 6 peer communities, because it was the amount of land they needed, we could not accommodate here, and we did not have the infrastructure in place. We've long talked about the need of when we're going to expand, when we're going to get all these things done. That woke us up and said, you know, the time has come. We've got to react. We've got to get this done. So what we're proposing in the dark shaded area there is to build that east-west connecting road and a north-south road that would allow us to then serve all that remaining property out there. We're not going to design lots at a certain size because we got to be as flexible as possible. Same thing we're doing with the rail park. One company might need 3 acres, one might need 5, one might need 40. But we want to have the best of all worlds. And this works, if we get that corridor with the ingress and egress coming out of there and the traffic flow much better, it's going to help sell itself even more so in the future. Here's a picture of some of the buildings that have gone out, up out there. If you haven't been out there for a while, I'd highly encourage you to drive out there and see the activity that's going on. And it's really been growing an enhanced reputation. So the redevelopment plan is banking on the fact that we can continue to develop it, and we'll need the enhancement of the valuation to be able to afford to put the streets, the sewer, the water, and the stormwater issues all in place so the community can continue to have and continue to market itself as a shovel-ready community-controlled business park. It's critically important for our economic development efforts, and it's the only way that we can afford to get this done. So I appreciate your consideration of it. And this did also get the unanimous consent of the Planning Commission and the Community Redevelopment Authority.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Okay, we continue with the public hearing on this subject. Does anyone have any thoughts or comments on this one? If so, please come up to the microphone. Tell us who you are and where you live. It would appear that no one has a comment.
I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion Garrick, second Nisley. Calling the question on closing the public hearing. Angie, would you switch us back, please? Hold on just a second, everybody. Okay, please continue voting. Thank you. Drum roll. Uh-oh. Sorry, technical difficulties. Okay, well, in the interest of time, Angie, would you just do a quick roll call vote, please?
Nisley?
Aye.
Tryon? Aye. Bowles?
Aye.
Lucas?
Aye.
Garrick?
Aye.
Harmon?
Aye.
Baker?
Aye.
Woods?
Aye.
Thank you. Public hearing is now closed. Okay. Now the council will consider action on the North Platte Planning Commission's recommendation to approve the City of North Platte amended redevelopment plan for a portion of the Twin Rivers Industrial Park for the real estate described as attractive land in the southeast quarter of Section 15, Township 13 North, Range 30 West of the 6th PM, Lincoln County, Nebraska, pursuant to Nebraska Community Development Law and passage of appropriate resolution. And while we're doing that, Angie will continue to work with her stuff. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt the resolution as presented in council materials and approval of the City of North Platte amended redevelopment plan for a portion of the Twin Rivers Industrial Park and approval of related actions.
Second.
Motion Vols, second Lucas. Do we have discussion on item number 10? Okay. Angie, how you doing over there?
Not good.
I'm sorry. Did someone say something? Mr. Reeker, go ahead. You have the floor.
I have a question, I guess, Gary, regarding this. I went back and reviewed the planning commission meeting that was held on the 31st of May. And there was a question specifically asked about whether or not the city could just go in and pave a street without the help of without the approval of the property owners. And I believe Lane answered that question. And I think have quoted here specifically what he said. Normal paving districts are paid normal street paving by the lot owners, and so anyone that is on a gravel street today can petition for a paving district and have those paid with the costs assessed to the property owners. That's normal, how it's done. You have to have more than, you have to have 51% of the property owners along the street request and approve it to get it done. And then it is assessed on lot footage based on the cost of the front footage. There was some other conversation, and then his final comment was, normal practice, and this is not just North Platte, this is normal practice throughout the municipalities, is the property owners pay for that, and they get assessed usually over a 10-year assessment to pay for that property. Why should this property be different than the normal landowner?
Because of it being community controlled. We don't do it to make money. We try to do it to accommodate business and industry and bring new investment into the community. That's the reason the Development Corporation developed a business park to start with, because it had a blight designation and they could use that tool to put the infrastructure in. You know, it's a development practice. It's accepted. You look at any business park that's community controlled in the state of Nebraska, and I'll bet you the vast majority have used tax increment financing to put the infrastructure in. And a lot of them use it to purchase the property as well.
Okay.
The land that we are impacting is owned by our Chamber and Development Corporation.
Right, and I understood that, yeah.
And we've talked to some bankers, and it's not something that they would probably finance without. They've told us they would not finance it without the ability to tap into it.
So can we work with the city and do some type of a paving district where that would be paid for over time?
Well, the thing you're going to get by the TIF bond getting paid off is you're going to get all that value, all that new value on there. And we can make that happen a lot quicker. From those companies we're going to recruit that'll create the new increment that will help pay off the TIF bond by the recruitment of their new valuation. And those companies those valuations will eventually be on the tax rolls, and those jobs will immediately begin earning wages here. With the sustainable beef and the industrial rail project, we know a lot of ancillary businesses will come with them. They're all looking for potential sites here. Again, the more that we can accommodate and make something shovel ready, the better. I mean, it's critical for us to move forward on this.
And I understand this, and maybe I don't understand this. If we were to create a paving district out there, and the city paves this, and then that goes on the DevCo's balance sheet where you have to pay it off, why can't that fee be assessed to the land when you sell it to the purchaser that wants to build on it? Why can't that developer, the person that wants to buy the land to build on it, why would not he pick up that additional cost for the paving as part of the purchase price?
Well, they could do that today, Ed, but that's why, I mean, they're gonna look for something that, I mean, the recruitment business, it's the community that could be the most, has the best deal, you know? We look at it as if we can accommodate getting in there, as economically as possible, we'll get the immediate benefit from it. And it's, you know, incentives have been used since the beginning of time in this part of the country. I mean, I get asked the question all the time, when did we start all this incentive game? Well, you ever heard of the Homestead Act or the Kincaid Act, Transcontinental Railroad Act? anybody's families ever come to this area because of those three greatest incentive programs there ever was. If it wasn't for that incentive, they wouldn't have come.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor? Mr. Lucas, you have the floor.
Yeah, Ed, that topic came up in the CRA meeting, I think, and the question that you just brought up, and it's a good question. I think there's a couple things important to talk about on that. I think you generally see a city do a district like that if you're in an area that's really hot, main thoroughfare, main location type. Like, for example, when the road was run along the hotel and along the pond, right by the interstate, there's a paving district used for the first portion of that. I mean, because that's pretty high-class real estate right there. Made sense. But the thing I think that we have to be conscientious of, I mean, what Gary's saying is that, we need that lower lot price, because when you have the search firm or the people who are looking for the site selection for the business, they're going to line everything up in a column, North Platte, Columbus, Fremont, or whoever in a row, and the special assessments and all that are going to be lined up, and so they're going to look at that as additional lot costs. So that's one thing. But the other thing is what Tiff does in this case is it splits the financing between, in essence, the county, the school district, the community college, everybody who's a real estate taxing authority is, in essence, working together to finance that real estate, because, a city, we're a small part of the real estate tax. If you do a paving district, we're the ones financing it. I mean, we're the ones who are, if we're choosing to float the interest, if we're choosing, I mean, there's real costs of doing that type of district at the city level. And so in my opinion, you could get a real imbalance. You have to be pretty sure it's going to build out quick, you're going to get those assessments paid quickly and all that, or the city's got a major financial commitment when we're the ones who are just getting a smaller portion of the real estate tax. And so one thing that I think gets lost a little bit in that comparison outside of the incentive is that it does become a short-term sacrifice financing mechanism by all the taxing authorities together based on the percentage of the real estate taxes we get. And so in this case, I think it makes sense to use TIF, but if this was, right on the highway and was hot area that every hotel owner wanted a lot in, take maybe the casino property for an example. I'd be less inclined to think that TIF's a good usage there and more the paving district route, because I think that's a little different situation.
Maybe I don't Mr. Mayor, maybe I don't understand this, I guess. If a paving district is created and the paving is done and the city bonds that assessment for the cost of that paving that is done on that property is assessed to the property taxes of the owner of the property, correct?
Correct. Yep.
So if I have 10 years to pay that off, I have to pay it off in 10 years, or else it goes into default.
Right, but we still have, as a city, we still have to pave. We still got to write a check.
Understood.
So in TIF, they're writing the check. We're not paying for anything other than a little bit of Brent's time and whoever's time at the city to bring this all together. In the paving district scenario, we're paying for it. And so, yeah, then we have a schedule and an agreement to recoup that money, but you're using the city's credit, you're using the city's balance sheet, you're in essence potentially taken away from other things you could choose to finance. But yes, depending on how that district's set up, you should recoup those funds. If it goes the way it's supposed to, and you should, yeah, and you should get it, But you tend to see, I think those generally in this case work better if you have less speculation, because we don't know how, we have no idea how quickly these structures are going to come online out there.
How long will the TIF bond be paid off on, how long is this set up for?
It can potentially be phased in, because obviously we want to.
Microphone.
We'll have things ready to roll, but and we might put some in initially, but some of it might be phased in, because you don't want to lose your increment, But the initial infrastructure that was put in, I believe Tiff, the quality growth funds and everything else was used to put that in. It's the reason the business park existed. I think a lot of that is now fully on the tax rolls because it was far enough ago that happened. It's just a development mechanism, Ed, and as Ty said, you're in a very competitive situation with these things. And the higher we use it as part of the incentive to attract that new investor from the outside coming into our community. By using TIF, we can use that as the incentive rather than using other resources that we might have.
On the projects that have been built out there, Gary, do you have an idea how much the cost per foot's gonna be and how long the frontage is on those are out there now, and how much that's gonna add to the cost of that land to be sold?
Well, again, we want to be able to recapture our costs. We're not in the business to go broke. So, I can't give you the exact numbers or details. I mean, you and I can sit down and go over them sometime if you want to, but we just know that, we've seen the benefits of having a shovel-ready business park. It gets our foot in the door. We're doing the same thing with the rail park. I mean, those companies just don't come along and put all that in themselves. They just, they don't have the luxury of time, and they can go somewhere else that's going to do it for them. They don't have any allegiance to North Platte.
No, I understand. That's why I was thinking if we did a paving district, it could be done right now.
Paving districts do have their value, but it's all different circumstances also. But as Ty said, you're using city resources to do it.
No, I understand.
And risk, and you're taking the risk.
Thank you.
Yep.
And just to finish, to get out of order here, but I want to add, Ed, we should be looking at that on any of these street projects. The question that was brought up at the CRA is the right question. We should be analyzing the pros and cons of both. I don't think it should be just automatic TIF on all these. There definitely is a place for those districts and we've used them before here. And so I was glad that came up with the CRA meeting, because I think that's a lot of their job is to work with Gary and really scrub that and figure out which route they think makes sense for that particular place.
Mr. Woods? Mr. Pearson? Got a question for you. This is clarifying my own mind. You say it could be phased in. Now, I know as you sell a property, then you'll have that extra ad valorem to start paying down the TIF fund. But if you put all this infrastructure in, I'm assuming you're going to do it all at once.
Not necessarily. That's why I say it may be phased in. It's going to depend on, if you got a couple projects together, you can.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, we need to address some of it now, just because of what exists out there right now.
Well, if you want it to be shovel-ready, not that I'm for TIF, but it seems like it should all be done at once.
Yeah.
Because you don't know how big an area a business might need.
Right. That's preferable. The problem is you lose time on your ability to recapture your revenue.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the thing we have to guard against. And in a perfect world, get it all in right now. We have bid it out once, be done with it. But I'm just telling you that it may have to be phased in. And we're seeing housing developers that do that now too, just because they got to maximize their bang for the buck. And that's to keep the end cost as low as possible. And the reward is down the road. The short-term pain for a lot of gain in the long run.
I have one other question too on that. The road that's going to go between the Coors and Mark Luther's property.
Right.
Why would that not be a paving district? Those business, Mark Luther's property already got TIF for development. Coors is building theirs, and my understanding of TIF is you're not going to build it if you can't afford it. So why are they not being assessed a paving district to pay for that section of the road?
Yeah, we have to put a TIF district together, and we've had those conversations with them. And so, that they know that they're going to pay some of it.
How? Just think a paving district would be best, and then they can pay for it.
I understand what you're
Those
saying.
property taxes then will not be delayed. They'll go into the county, well, no, into the city coffers, the city land. Yeah, so, okay. And then one other comment. On a paving district, as I remember, you pay interest if you choose not to pay off, and I would assume the interest is probably larger than what the city is paying on the bond. Right, so actually the city would make a small profit, it would seem, on a paving district if everybody chose to pay it out over the full 10 years. So that's it.
Okay. Ms. Tryon, you have the floor.
Thank you. I have a question for Gary, I'm sorry.
You're getting your steps in tonight, Gary.
You mentioned the quality growth funds. Somebody said that they have used those funds in the past to do street. And I know our sales tax revenues have been higher, so do you know where the balance of that fund is? And can any
Well,
of that money be used in
That
this
money,
situation?
but that was restricted to a certain amount. And the argument is you're taking away a valuable resource that could be used for other things. And we've tapped it pretty hard here recently with the, everything from the mall project, sustainable beef, to the rail park project. So it no longer has its healthy balance. Granted, the citizens were gracious enough to renew it. But again, we had it lowballed at $350,000 a year. And that's the same thing it's been for, 20 years now? Or maybe not very initially, but we've never increased it. And of course, we were in the middle of a pandemic when we had to try to renew it. We knew we needed to ask for more, but we wanted to at least have something that we could have a reasonable chance of getting the voters to vote for in the middle of chaos of what was going on right then, and they were gracious enough to do that. But you're using that resource, which can be going to something else. With Tiff, you're creating all your new value. You're creating something out of nothing and turning it into something really good, because you could capture that revenue initially to help pay off that infrastructure, and then the long term for the next 100+ years, you're going to be reaping the benefits. And you're going to be reaping the benefits. Take Walmart DC for a perfect example as the Tiff project. We look at the $22 million of value that's added to North Platte. But what about all those houses that got built and rented, and all the vehicles their employees bought, and all the wages those people spend here? That's why TIF projects, you have to look at the big picture, not just the immediate, short-term sacrifice that's being made. To me, it's the greatest development tool there is, because you're inventing something out of nothing and you're not using existing resources.
Well, you and I we part ways on that logic, so I just wanted to know where the quality growth fund was. Thank you.
Any other discussion on item number 10? I think we're going to have to do we're having a little technical difficulty tonight, so we will do a roll call vote. So you will vote aye if you're voting in favor. You would vote nay if you're voting against something. So aye in favor, nay against. Okay? When you're ready, Angie.
Leslie?
Aye.
Tryon?
Nay.
Bowles?
Aye.
Lucas?
Aye.
Garrick?
Aye.
Harmon?
Aye.
Acre?
Nay.
Woods?
Nay.
I believe the ayes have it. Is that correct? Okay. Item number 10 passes. Item number 11. We have yet another public hearing tonight, folks. should be more smiling out there. Come on. Okay, a public hearing to consider adopting ordinance number 4093 and recommendation by the North Platte Planning Commission to rezone certain land from an A-1 transitional agricultural district to an R-2 dwelling district on property located on the corner of North Adams Avenue and West 17th Street. This is a public hearing. Anyone would like to make comments on this item, please approach and let us know what your thoughts are. It would appear that we do not have anyone who's going to make a comment.
Move to close public hearing.
Second.
Motion Nisley to close the public hearing. Second, I think Pete and Ed had a tie on that, so we'll call it Vols. Well, you guys can arm wrestle for it after the meeting, okay? Dinner? Okay, do we have our technology back? It would appear not. So we need a roll call vote on closing the public hearing, please. Again, aye in favor, nay against.
Nisley?
Aye.
Tryon? Aye. Vols?
Aye.
Lucas?
Aye.
Garrett?
Aye.
Harmon?
Aye.
Leaker?
Aye.
Woods?
Aye.
Okay, the public hearing is now closed. Council will now consider adopting ordinance number 4093 and recommendation by the North Platte Planning Commission to rezone certain land from an A-1 transitional agricultural district to an R-2 dwelling district on property located on the corner of North Adams Avenue and West 17th Street. Lane, would you please read the ordinance?
Ordinance number 4093, an ordinance of the City of North Platte, Lincoln County, Nebraska, rezoning certain lands described as a tract of land in the southeast quarter of Section 29, Township 14 North, Range 30 west of the 6 p.m., Lincoln County, Nebraska, from an A1 transitional agricultural district to an R2 dwelling district, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for the effective date and publication thereof.
I move to adopt
Thank you.
ordinance number 4093 to rezone certain land from an A1 transitional agricultural district to an R2 dwelling district on first reading.
Second.
Motion Garrick, second Carmen. Do we have any discussion on item number 11?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Lucas, you have the floor.
I'd like to move to amend the motion to waive the 3 required readings on ordinance number 4093.
Second.
Okay, motion Lucas, second Vols, to amend the number of readings to 1 rather than 3. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Correct. May I go ahead and comment about it?
certainly. Go ahead.
My thought is that this project has had a significant number of public hearings because of the redevelopment plan, and therefore the public's had sufficient time and sufficient access to information to weigh in on this project.
Okay. Any other items of discussion on the motion to change from 3 readings to 1?
What's the motivation, Ty, I guess? You're wanting to speed the process up? Is that what you're thinking, or what?
You know, I don't know that it's really necessary for the speed of the project, but I think from their standpoint, they're out trying to work and secure builders and I think they know their general costs of infrastructure at this point, and so now it's a race of trying to get things done while you can keep your cost structure intact, which is very difficult in today's world. And if there's going to be any problems with this where it wouldn't be R2, so R2 would allow townhomes, duplexes, and higher density in addition to single family. And so I would imagine it could have some stalling effect on their ability to, lock down contractors. I mean, if it was going to get changed to R1 later or something, or R3, it would be altering. And so I guess really, from my end, it just boils down to that there's been lots of public hearings on the matter. I think the public's had plenty of time to react. And so I just don't feel like we need to spend more time on it.
Thank you.
Other discussion on the motion? Angie, are you ready to do roll call?
Nisley?
Okay, hold on just a second. So just want to be clear here, sorry. First of all, it's aye to vote in favor, nay to vote against, and we are voting on the motion to go from 3 readings to only 1 on item number 11. Okay? Angie?
Nestle? Nay. Tryon? Nay. Bowles?
Aye.
Lucas?
Aye.
Garrick?
Aye.
Harmon?
Aye.
Baker?
Nay.
Woods?
Nay.
Is that 4 to 4? Okay. I vote aye. So the motion passes. So, excuse me, point of order. That requires a supermajority. Okay, excuse me, my vote is irrelevant. Motion fails. Okay, so we're back to the original.
How do you like that?
Well, Ed, you'll be clean when you get home. Okay.
Should have left the door open. Wash it out.
Okay, so the motion from 1 reading, or excuse me, from 3 readings to 1 has failed. So now we're back to discussion of the original motion. Do we have any other discussion on the original motion?
Mr. Mayor, and I'll be brief. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, Mr. Lucas, you have the floor.
I just want to reiterate that I think the R2 flexibility is very important here. Trying to get anything new built under $250,000 is going to be extremely difficult, and so as we go through this, I hope we can follow the Planning Commission's recommendation and give them that flexibility, even though they are targeting single-family homes. I think they just really need that flexibility to be successful with this project. I also want the public to be very clear that this subdivision as proposed will have that flexibility as well.
Any other comments on item number 11? Angie, are you ready for a roll call vote? Okay, so we will do aye in favor and nay against. Angie, roll call, please.
Nestle?
Aye.
Tryon? Nay. Bowles?
Aye.
Lucas?
Aye.
Garrick? Aye. Harmon?
Aye.
Baker?
Aye.
Woods?
Nay.
Motion passes. Number 12, approve claims.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the claims.
Second.
Second.
Oh, okay, sorry. Motion, sorry, I didn't hear Mr. Carmen. Sorry, motion Reeker, second Mr. Carmen. Roll call vote on approving the claims.
Nestle?
Aye.
Tryon? Aye. Bowles?
Aye.
Lucas?
Aye.
Garrick?
Aye.
Harmon?
Aye.
Baker?
Aye.
Woods?
Thank you. Public agenda request. We request our city employees and, we respect our city employees and request that any complaints or criticisms of employees not be aired in a public meeting. Concerns about employees should be brought to the attention of the city administrator or the mayor. Individuals in violation will be declared out of order. This is the portion of the meeting where anyone who has an agenda request item may approach and recommend that we consider something in the future. Does anyone like to approach? Seeing no volunteers, Mr. Reeker.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adjourn.
Motion Reeker, second Carmen to adjourn. Roll call vote to adjourn, please.
Nestle?
Aye.
Tryon? Aye. Bowles?
Aye.
Lucas?
Aye.
Garrick?
Aye.
Harmon? Baker?
Aye.
Woods?
All right. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Put your raincoat on before you go outside.
Well, have a good trip. Thank you. I hope I didn't betray